Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth, and welcome to episode 24 of the 4x4 Earth podcast with Rudy Paoletti and the Walhalla Woods Point Gold Belt.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Welcome back. Happy New Year. First podcast for 2017. Super excited about it. We've got an awesome guest in today. Rudy Paoletti does an amazing amount of really interesting work out in the Walhalla area. So we're going to be talking about him in a little while. But before we get on to that, a couple of things. Firstly, there's a big discussion going on 4x4 Earth at the moment. We're trying to work out what the future of 4x4 Earth is going to be. So really keen to get everyone who's listening to the podcast, and the podcast is going amazingly well. I think we're up to 120,000 downloads now, which is a huge effort. It's the number one Australian-produced automotive podcast in iTunes, which is super exciting. And some of the tracks are going really, really well. So I've got a post which I'm going to include in the show notes where I give a whole heap of figures about how much money we make, how many people go to the site on an average month, and we're up to about 225,000 people visiting the site every month. Hundreds of thousands of unique URLs with all sorts of really interesting information. And we sat down last weekend with some of the moderators, some of the big users of the group, as well as Jason Locke and Robert Pepper, who you'll know from the podcast, to really sort of get an understanding of where we're going with 4x4 Earth. And a couple of things have come out of that. We need to secure some sort of source of funding. We want to do some things like fix the tracks database. We want to come up with a trip booking system. There's a whole heap of things that I think are really important to achieve our goal, and that is to get more people to go out and explore the glorious four-wheel driving areas that we've got to go out into. And to really do that, we need a fair amount of money. The tracks database alone, getting that up to where we want it to be, is probably a $20,000 job. So there's a really good and interesting conversation about where we want to go with that on the website. One of the things that's also come out of that is that we may need to get a new slogan. So for 10 years, we've been the people who've been looking for a good route. And I used to say that, all of our moderators, you've helped over 1 million people find a good route. Now, is that a little bit cheesy? Is it a little bit sexist? Is it a little bit inappropriate, particularly if we're looking to get corporate sponsorship? Possibly. So there's a huge discussion going on. It's been viewed a couple of thousand times and over 100 replies of people having a discussion and coming up with a whole heap of really interesting ideas about what the 4x4 Earth slogan should be. So have a look at those. That would be really good. In the meantime, one of the things that people have been saying is, there should be a store where you can get some, 4x4 Earth stubby holders, caps, and t-shirts. There is one already. So I'm going to include a link in the store notes. It's partially about spreading the word about 4x4 Earth. It's partially about you getting some 4x4 Earth swag. It's more about supporting the site. And I think that that's the really important thing that everyone needs to remember, is that I think it's really important that the site remains free, because the person I'm most interested in, the person who's just gone and bought a four-wheel drive, whether it's new or secondhand, they're thinking about going out off-road. They need that first time that they go out. There's a couple of things that are really important to them. One, they shouldn't go out alone. Two, they need to understand the limitations of their new vehicle, because the four-wheel drive salesperson, he would have said, this will take you anywhere you want to go, mate. Yeah, she's a beauty. You won't have to worry about that. And we all know that that's not true. So it's got to be free for those people. And I see it all the time. People who've gone out, they haven't had a good experience first time out, and they go, you know what, four-wheel driving, it's for idiots, it's a stupid sport, you should just lock up all of the tracks. And what happened, when you dig into it, they've gone four-wheel driving once, they've had a lot of panel damage, they've come in, they've come back, they've copped a lot of grief from their friends and their wife, and they think, yep, I'm never going to make that mistake again. And that's bad. So have a look, read through it, buy a t-shirt, do all of those sort of things. And without further ado, let's have a listen to Rudy and the amazing work that he's been doing out in the Walhalla region. Hey, Rudy, welcome to the podcast.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So do you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself about, what it is that you do and why you do it?
Well, some people may call me a historian. I'd rather be called an explorer. and campaigner to protect Australia's history. I do many things. I run the NavRun four-wheel drive events, which is the only commercial run navigational four-wheel drive event in Australia. I run about 3 or 4 of those events a year, and they're made it's like an orienteering course, so it's family friendly as well. And I also publish maps and books around the West Gippsland area, which we call the Walhalla Woods Point Gold Belt. I've produced over 20 detailed historical and four-wheel drive maps of that area, as well as published over 12 historical books on that region as well. So, and also in the last 4 to 5 years, was also the founder and also now the maintenance manager of the Aberfeldy track, the largest European touring route in the Southern Hemisphere. So I'm very proud to be associated with that as well.
Awesome. So before we get into the details of that, some important questions. What four-wheel drive have you got?
Okay, I have a Nissan Patrol, a GU, a Series 3. It's just a wagon, quite decked out and modified.
And why did you choose that?
Nissan Patrols have got a good reputation for their toughness in the bush, and when I do four-wheel driving, I need reliability, and they're renowned for that. And also, they're very easily modified, so getting parts and accessories is not a problem with those vehicles at all.
Which leads on to the next question. What mods have you done?
I try not to go over the top. 4-inch suspension lift, a little bit larger tyres. Only run 33-inch tyres. I don't need to go bigger. 33-inch does everything I need to do, and that is including setting up nav runs, and I'll get everywhere where everyone else goes. It's got a very heavy-duty undercarriage, which is very important. Rock sliders, winch, bull bar, and all the same, spotlights and all that stuff. Inside, it's all fully decked out with drawer system. I run a 57-litre Engel freezer, and with internal water tank and everything like that, and a full-on navigation system, which I've created myself, 2 touch screens, inboard hard drive computer, and numerous other little gadgets and stuff like that, just to make me self-sufficient and do what I need to do.
Interesting. So what software do you run there for the navigation?
Oh, definitely Aussie Explorer.
Okay.
I have over 30 gigabytes of electronic maps, so why wouldn't you? So any map you want, I'll pull it up just like that.
Gold. So mud, snow, sand or rock, what's your favourite?
Yeah, I don't like the snow. I'm not very good at driving on the snow, and I just don't like the white stuff. So, I've probably driven on snow maybe 3 times in my lifetime, so we'll keep away from snow. Rock, probably. It's easy to navigate, and mud, mud gets everywhere, and then you got to clean it out. So let's stick with rock. But sands, I don't mind sand. I do a lot of driving in the Mallee, Wimmer area. I love that area. Yeah, so and it's easy to negotiate. So that sort of sand is okay. Sand dunes, not too bad, but yeah, I prefer the Mallee sand. So.
Cool. So the best track and why?
Right.
This could be a tricky one.
Question, that one. There's a lot of them around there. Oh, look, I could be biased and say the Aberfeldy track, which is not a track on its own. It's a whole region, and playing around the Walhalla, Woods Point, Jamison area. Pick and choose any track you like. They're all great tracks. And look, I'm not a fan of heights. So you know, if there's a steep drop off on a track with no trees and stuff like that, I freak out. So I try to keep away from those type of tracks. I think Blue Rag's probably what I've been told, one of them. So you won't get me driving on that. I'll just freak out. So yeah, just stick around the Aberfeldy track area, I think.
So the hairiest moment that you've had four-wheel driving, and what did you learn from it?
Many, many years ago, we won't go how many years, but a long time ago, I was around the Talbotville area, and there's a track called Collingwood Spur.
Yep.
And we just had a massive hailstorm, rain. Now, those days, I didn't know anything about tyre pressure. So I'm running on 40 pound and all terrains, and I'm going downhill, and I'm starting to slide a bit, and I'm running out of brakes. And I just couldn't stop, and it just kept sliding. I was increasing speed more and more and more. I had nowhere to go. There was a steep drop-off on one side, no option. I had the bank, which I was hugging the bank, and at times I was getting to the whoop-de-doos, and I was almost slowed up on my brakes and couldn't quite hold me, and I managed to hold it up right near the bottom. And, yeah, I really freaked out that time, and yeah, if I knew about tyre pressures and other things, yeah, it would have been a lot easier. Now I know those things are sort of not an issue anymore. So, and because the car was auto as well, because I lost brakes, I was using too much brakes, the gearing wasn't low enough. Now with the Patrol, I've got an Tiptronic auto, but I've also got Rock Crawler 80% reduction gears, which makes a hell of a difference. So, yep, that was a big learning curve for me.
And it's interesting. I think that's probably one of the big mistakes that newbies make when they go out four-wheel driving is, you spend your whole life prior to going off-road in pumping the tyres up. Why on earth would you let them down? It just seems like crazy talk. And you talk to a lot of people, it's like, oh, should be all right. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Well, it does make a difference, doesn't it?
It does. Look, I was the same. I had that what you're talking about now. I had that same concept. You go, why would you let it down? What difference it makes? It does make a huge difference. And we all learn. You got to learn from your mistakes sometimes. And, and hopefully before you have an accident, you learn, and then you were right. Put those tyre pressures down.
Exactly, yep.
Big.
So the Walhalla Woods Point Gold Belt, what is it that sort of draws you to that area?
Probably the best thing is to start from the start.
Yep.
I first went in that area in 1994 with my cousin, Jeanette Paoletti. Now, she introduced me to that area after reading the book on Donnelly's Creek. I first went up there, we drove around, and everything that book talked about we couldn't find. And there was no signpost or anything. So after we went back home, I read the book and what she was telling me about, and the history was just unbelievable. So I went back there again, and we started to walk off the beaten track. We were finding all these great sites. We said to ourselves, well, why don't we produce a map of this area showing not only the four-wheel drive tracks, but all the historical stuff as well? Because previously to that, I actually mapped the Big Desert and Sunset Country years prior to that, and I had a bit of mapping experience, but my cousin was also a cartographer, and which helped in that aspect. So we decided to put a map out on the Donnelly's Creek area. We produced 2 maps, and they sold very well, and we were very proud by showing all the historical stuff, and people started to comment on it and getting out there. And this produced a challenge for us, like, okay, because there's nothing out there marked, signposted and that, and very few people know what's out there, let's start researching the area and producing a series of maps. And overall, we produced 20 maps between Walhalla, Jamison, which covered Woods Point, Enoch's Point, Big River area, what they call the Walhalla Woods Point Gold Belt. And during that time, my cousin had other ambitions, so I bought the business off her, and I grew the business by republishing old historical books which weren't in print anymore, and then I started to publish my own book. So I think I'm up to the 12th or 13th publication of that area. So what drew me is just the challenge of finding historical stuff in that area. And to date, I have found over 1,500 historical sites which I have documented, and every year we find more and more. So basically I've spent close to more than 20 years now in that area. But also during that time, I did also work for Heritage Victoria and DELP as well, which was all voluntary. One time I was embarked to find the lone graves of that area, which is over 150 documented lone graves. And when I embarked doing the project, I actually found 9 or 10, which might not seem a lot, but when you've got nothing to go by, that's a big number that we've found. So, and that they also commissioned me down the track to do heritage study work. Because I was so learned of the area, they commissioned me if I could do heritage work when there was logging in the area or there was mining companies wanting to put a track in or do mining, so I could protect the historical sites because I knew so much of that area. And I was wrapped doing that sort of stuff. Although I wasn't paid, it wasn't about the money. It was about saving the historical sites as well, and that worked quite well. But over 20 years being in the area, I was also trying to campaign for funding to protect the historical sites with some sort of signage or recognition. And every time I asked, could we have a little bit of money, The answer was, sorry, we haven't. But there was one time, 5 years ago now, there was a new ranger at the Erica district in Delp's office, and her name was Suzette Fullerton, and I met her. And I met her once or twice, and then one time I called in the office, as I do, for a coffee, because I was well known and respected, and had a coffee with her and said, look, would there be any funding available? All I'd need is $10,000. And she said to me, look, funny enough, we've got some fire recovery money that will go back to state revenue if it's not applied for by 5 p.m. And the time was 3:30 that afternoon. And I said, look, I only need $10,000. And she said, look, there's a couple of $1 million sitting in there. I go, what? No one's claimed it. Anyway, she starts typing away, and if anyone notices that, she's a really fast typer. She's going bang, bang, bang on the keyboard. I'm trying to keep up reading what she's typing. And then I noticed the figure she puts in. It's $100,000. And I said, Suzette, for $10,000 you made a mistake. She goes, nah, you watch, I'll get it. I go, wow, okay. So she pressed enter, made a phone call, and she got it. Just like that.
Wow.
$100,000. And I was just overwhelmed. I was almost in tears, fighting for 20 years, trying to get a little bit of dollars. And here she gets $100,000 just in one tap of the keyboard. That was incredible. And I thought, okay, yeah, excellent. $100,000, I could do a lot of signs there. In a few months, it's all done. No, I was really wrong. After a couple of years, it took to get all this project underway. Because, you had to, there was so much involved in it. Like, you had to see what type of signs you're going to have, what's the touring route, where things going to go, what logos, what are we going to call it, the colour of the signs, this and that. Just goes on and on and on. So we had to form a steering committee with other historians and locals of the area and go through that whole process. Now, even before I put up a sign for this, what we call with the Aberfeldy track, which that's how we got that name, I had to go and spend 3 weeks out there and document every site for Heritage Victoria. We got trained. I had a couple of DELP trainees with me, which helped me. But 3 weeks out in the bush to document every site. And there was 5 pages every site we had to do. It was just massive. So I had to document all the sites, and I actually set up the touring route, what sites should be there. And we kept all the sites near the main roads, and most of it's two-wheel drive access as well, but there is areas where there's four-wheel drive access as well. So anyway, I set up the touring route. We got all the sites planned, Heritage Victoria in their database, then go back to the committee. Okay, this is what we've got. Okay, what do we want to put on the sign? And that was another hard thing. We didn't want too much of a history lesson on the sign, because if there's 50 to 100 signs out there and you go to each one, boring history, just stats. People don't want to read stats all the time. They want to read funny stories. And there's a lot of funny stories we put on these signs. So, okay, we put a little bit of history, but there's always some sort of sad or funny story on these signs that would make you want to go to the next one and read the next one, so you're not bored with that sort of stuff. So, and that's how we kept that sort of theme. But we also, not only did we did the historical sites with the interpretive signage on these tracks, which it's over 100 signs out there now, James. It's actually growing bigger and bigger. But we also cleared all the cemetery sites up there. We spent weeks and weeks clearing cemeteries. One comes to mind is in the Jordan Valley, the Red Jacket. I asked Doc to backburn it because it was very scrubby. You couldn't walk in it. It was just full of blackberries and everything. Backburn it. We cleaned it all by hand, raked it all, and then we metal detected it. And by doing that, we found over 20 new graves. We also found the old steel clover leaf numbers buried. Some were buried 2 foot under the ground with the silt. So we dug them out carefully and placed them where they lay, which was on the foot of the grave. So, and then we got them all heritage fenced and everything like that and signposted. So we did that with quite a few cemeteries. Lone graves as well. All the lone graves I had found, which I think by memory there's 5 or 6 on this route. They're all properly fenced and signposted as well, and a bit of history as well to that, so people know when they approach this lone grave. I've created walks, beautiful historical walks that everyone can do in the area, and they go to hut sites, cemeteries or lone graves, beautiful walks, and so there's something for everyone on this touring route. So, but look, it took at least 2 years to get all those signs out there. Now, the problem was, okay, we've got the infrastructure in place. What do you do to maintain it? As you know, the bush can reclaim stuff within 6 to 12 months and it's back to its original. Who's going to look after these signs? And I put my hand up and I said to Delp, I would like to be the manager and keep this project going. And we signed an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the state government that my incorporation, which we have to, as you know, we have to inform incorporation, will look after this whole region. So if any vandalism or damage occurs, it comes up under our pocket, and that's fine. I was happy with that because I know if I control it, things will get done. And
do you get a lot of vandalism out there?
We do. I wouldn't say a lot. I think we get average 2 signs a year, 2 to 3 signs a year. Look, the directional signage we can repair, but when they destroy interpretive signage, it can't be repaired, so we've got to replace it. But in recent time, just the other day, we had a company that donated a sign because it had been stolen, which I don't know why people steal them, and they donated it. And I asked them for a quote, and their quote was really, really cheap, and so we're going with them now. So that's going to help us a lot. So sometimes, you know, thinking something's bad happened, but it turns out to be good in the end.
Yeah.
So that worked out fine. So we don't try to dwell on the vandalism. You get that everywhere around the world. There's no different. Australia's no different to anywhere else around the world. So we just say, look, it happens. We don't like it. If we catch them, it's a bonus. If not, don't worry, we'll catch up with them in the end. So so that's fine. But the problem was our committee and our incorporation, although we've got 60 members and anyone can join our incorporation, it's a very hard project to maintain. You know, it covers a big area and there's over 100 sites. So who's going to look after cleaning the signs and trimming the bush around it and stuff like that? So we spoke with Four Drive Victoria, which we are affiliated with, and by doing so, we were able to get 4 drive clubs to adopt regions. And we have about 8 to 9 regions in the area which are divided for every 4 drive club. So we've got 9 4-drive clubs looking after this whole Aberfeldy track. And they love it. They treat it like their own, you know, and they're so passionate about it. And they do their clean-up, no less than 2 clean-ups a year. We provide them with mowers or whippersnippers if they need it, but a lot of the times they bring their own. And some of the areas are like manicured lawns now when you're at the sign. It's just incredible. The work they do is fantastic. So we can't thank the 4-drive clubs enough for doing that. So, and that makes us concentrate more on maintaining the signage. We oversee what people do, and we expand what we do as well. Now, because we went from Walhalla to Matlock, we had the Shire of Mansfield and Delp in Mansfield ask us, could they also have what we did? And the talk around it was just fantastic. And the word on the street was like everyone was talking about it. And Destination Gippsland, which is a big tourism body, had some phenomenal figures of tourism going there since we've put it up. Everyone wants to get on board. And I said, yeah, that's fine. So I actually set up the Mansfield touring route, what signs should be there. I set up their steering committee, and I worked alongside all the historians of the Woods Point, Greek Jamison region. And it was last year or the year before we actually opened up the extension. Sorry, years click on real quick. I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before.
Yep.
So, but that was just a phenomenal experience. Like, they really appreciated that we extended it all the way there. And I actually installed every pole and sign alongside Delp and other volunteers as well. So, because I'd love to be part of it and make sure everything's in the right place and stuff like that. But I'd like to also mention that we also produced a free map of the region, which covers all the way from Walhalla to Jamison, showing all the historical sites. Now, this is a beautiful colour map. Not only does it show where all the sites are, on the back of the map there's all the information and it's all colour-coded, what tourist route you got to need to take. And four-wheel drive, Victoria have also classified the tracks. So if you're a bit wary, it might be steep, or two-wheel drive access, it's all marked as well. And these maps are available free in that region to any business, but they're also available. I've installed 9 map stations on the touring route. So if you're driving along, you'll see a sign map station, and hopefully they're topped up with maps, and you can grab your free map out of that as well.
Is there a soft copy of that?
Yes, it is, yeah. I've calibrated one for Aussie Explorer, and I believe you might be able to use it for other formats because it's an OZF format.
Yep.
And it's a soft copy. But there's another copy I've got, which is all downloadable off our website. We call it the handicap map. Now, the reason why we say that, when you load it on Aussie Explorer, we've got all the sites on there, and if you hover over one of those sites and click on it, it opens up the PDF file and you can read the sign. You don't have to get out of your car. So you can actually do everything from home, or if you're in the field and you can't get out of your vehicle, or it's raining or whatever, just click on that little symbol and it brings up exactly what's on that sign right there. So it's a very well received map, and a lot of people download that one. So you thought, yeah, let's do it, because not everyone can go visit these signs, although most of them are next to the road, some a little bit further out. But we understand people haven't got the opportunity to get out of the car or do other certain things, and we've made that map available as well. It was an easy one to set up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's very well received. People just say, what a great idea, So, and it wasn't hard to set up. We've just applied for a grant for doing an app of the area as well. So stay tuned on that, but that could be another 2 years away by the time we finish setting up that app, but we hopefully not too long anyway. So, yeah. But, yeah, look, it was only like last week as well. I just come back from that area. We've put up another sign as well. We keep extending the project. I'm not sure how far we're going to go with it because there's a lot of sites to be done, but you only can go so far to all the sites on the road. Most of them are sort of more inland, which is harder to get to. But we could extend up to Enoch's Point, Big River. We wanted to. That's all part of the same area, the Walhalla Woods Point Gold Belt, so I might be looking at that. I want to also mention that this project has opened up areas, or what would you say, other parts of our culture that wasn't aware. One of them was the Chinese. I'm not sure how this eventuated. It might have been a phone call, or Suzette made a phone call to the Chinese Association in Melbourne. And anyway, they weren't aware that there was Chinese at Jericho. And now we're talking about these Chinese associations who've got direct link with China and the Communist Party, and they talk to their parliaments and they get funding. And so these are the bigwigs. And they want us to take them out there to show them. And we did. And a whole heap of them turned up, even a 90-something-year-old man these people are so passionate about their history. It's incredible, it's a great honour for them, this history. So I showed them the Chinese ovens up there. There's quite a rare Chinese oven up there not many people know about. And there's only 2 of these in Australia. And showed them other sites. I learnt a lot from them. Anyway, what they wanted to do, because they also part-own Cameo Memorials in Fawkner, and they showed us on a tour up there as well. They wanted to put a monument at Jericho to commemorate the Chinese being there, and also one at Walhalla. So first of all, we organised a nice sign, a steel sign, which is at Jericho near the oak tree, and they organised the 2 beautiful marble monuments. Anyway, before that, they needed to raise $10,000. So they invited me to a function at Mooney Ponds and a dinner there. And it was a function to raise $10,000. And you know what? They just raised $10,000 just with a click of a finger. Amazing. People just started writing out checks, bang, bang, bang. There you $10,000. It was so easy. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it because these guys, I didn't realise these guys are so passionate about history. and have so much respect. Anyway, and then sometime later they got the monuments done, and we went up there with them and we erected them. And you'll see them up there at Jericho and Walhalla now. See, if it wasn't for this project, nothing of this would have been done or known about. And it just opened up more and more. And the amount of feedback we're getting from Facebook and our website, and descendants of people contacting us and saying, we can't believe you've done this. This is great. Another thing, another notch in my belt was on Saturday, and this was a proud moment for me. There's only one marked grave at Edwards Reef Cemetery, and her name is Christina Shaw. It's just marked by a copper plate. Now, that copper plate was put in 1930 by her son, who was born at Donnelly's Creek, and his mum passed away when he was about 11 or 12 years old, and he made a pilgrimage and in 1930 to place this plaque. And when he went there, there's a whole diary on it, which I'm actually publishing next week, coincidentally, and he could hardly recognise the place. Everything grew over and trees were growing out of graves and everything, but they managed to locate his mother's grave, and they put this plaque. Anyway, I knew the family, and I've known the family for some time, and I always tried to thinking, well, how good would it be? We got photos of this Christina Shaw. We know the whole history about her. Why can't we put something to recognise? Because when you rock up to the grave, this copper plate you could hardly read, but then it's got an inscription in Gaelic. And people go, what's that thing mean? You know, because I take groups up there and whatever, and you have to explain it to people. I'm thinking, no, let's put something up there. So it was last year. I said, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to put a proposal to the family. I said, let's put an interpretation sign like we've got signs everywhere else. They were overwhelmed. I go, this is the greatest idea. So our incorporation funded it, but the family put in some dollars as well. We got the approval from the Cemetery Trust, and it was on Saturday that I erected it on Friday before the family arrived, but it was the big unveiling on Saturday where 29 members of the family arrived. It was very moving. We had our group there with the Cemetery Trust. There was about 50 or 60 people there. It was one of the best experiences I had. And now, when you go to that burial ground, you can read all about Christina, and you can actually see what she looks like as well. So I'm thinking, there we go. There's another notch in the Aberfeldy track where, no one knew what was there before. Now they do.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very proud, very proud.
So in the area, what are a couple of the really interesting stories from your point of view?
Store Point, Donnelly's Creek. There's a burial ground. It's about a 500-metre walk along an easy pack track. Now, that pack track wasn't as easy when I first arrived in the area. It was overgrown. It was a little bit washed away. But when we did this Aberfeldy track, I decided to put in a loop. Now, the reason why I did that, because this particular pack track split before you got to the burial ground, and it followed other pack tracks. So we manually cleaned them all up, and I created the shortcut loop, which wasn't there before, and went to all these hut sites. Now, thinking, okay, hut sites in the bush, they're everywhere. However, there's a diary of this area from 1883, which I published from a person called Gilbert Smith. Now, he lived at Fulton's Creek, and he had to walk to Store Point every Friday or Saturday to teach Sunday school. Now, he walked in 3 hours. Now, anyone who's driven from Fulton's Creek up Army Track down to Store Point, it's a good 1 hour drive. And this guy power walked up really steep hill and down to teach Sunday school. Anyway, and after the first 6 months, he moved to Store Point where he taught. He lived. He fossicked for gold, and he taught Sunday school. Now, he kept bringing up these names and how he got there and stuff like that. Now, he would come in from Fulton's Creek, and he used to say, I used to stop into the Barclays before I got to Store Point. And I'm scratching my head. Barclays. Oh, look, if you follow the original Army track down to Store Point, you don't get to Barclays first. It's very steep to the bottom, and then you get to this first house. What are you talking about? Anyway, I said to the guys who were doing some expedition work, I've got a theory on this. I know where he's come from. He's come up Army, but before he got to Store Point descending, he's taken the most obvious spur down the hill, shortcutting towards the burial ground, which gets to this hut site that I found. Now, this hut site I found, when we did some archaeological work on it, we actually found little porcelain toys, like little moo cows and stuff like that, little kid stuff. And we know the Barclays had 7 children. So we're sort of thinking, yeah, fairly close. Anyway, so I decided to walk down this spur, and no distinctive track, because most times you won't find tracks on the spur because it's not in a cutting. Anyway, as I get near the bottom, I go, oh, here we go. There's a start of a pack track coming down the spur. And it keeps going, and it meets up this other pack track and to this hut site, which I thought was the Barclays. And I go, this is where he's come from. He stops here, and then he goes from this point straight to the school at Store Point, which incidentally we've also marked the school site on this touring route I've put in. But there's other piece of the puzzle which I've solved. He talks about market gardens they had up in the gully in this area. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Walk this gully further past when the pack track ends, and it turns into a water race. And he mentions this water race going up to what he calls the garden site. So I walk another kilometre. This is going upstream of McKeon's Creek towards the springs. And it goes, yep, he's right. It gets the water race from the gully, and it ends up, and it comes to this. I come to this massive flat area, and I go, this is the garden he's talking about. And there's another little settlement up here with other houses which he talks about. But the funny enough thing he was saying that Mrs. Meagher's cows, which Mrs. Meagher used to live at a small township at the Springs, which is way up in the hill. Her cows used to come down, I don't know how, it's a pretty tough country, coming down and eat all the cabbages and all the produce, and they had to always shoo the cows back up top. So how the cows found out there was a garden way down there is beyond me. But those sort of funny stories. Now, he also talks, this is something I have yet to solve, but I'm getting closer and closer. He talks about when Mrs. Doan used to be what we refer to as the old Scotch woman. She used to run a hotel at Aberfeldy Crossing, another township I'd found, and she died at Store Point. That's where she lived her older years there. And he describes as she was buried next to 2 other graves in the gully. Now, we checked the death certificate, we've checked the witnesses, the time, the date, they all check out to his diary, okay, next to the 2 other graves in the gully, and go, where's he talking about? Somewhere near Store Point. Anyway, months later, he makes another mention about Joe Smith. Now, Joe Smith had worked a mining claim not far from Store Point, and he moved into Store Point up in this area, and it describes him as Joe building his house next to the grave in the gully. Okay, I know where that is. And goes, so when you go to the Store Point burial ground, the records state there's 60 burials in there. I have found no more than 5. And yet it's in the gully, and when they say Joe Smith is building a hut next to the graves, guess what? There's a hut right next to one of the graves there. And I reckon that's possibly Mrs. Doan or another one. Now, there's also some other... Now, he's talking about 2 other graves. So at the time, in 1883, there was 3 graves. I've counted about 5. Now, one of them's John Dare. He was later. He was 1890, something. So they've added a couple more graves. But I'm thinking, where are the other 50 or so graves? Now, going back to this diary, he says a couple of weeks later, Mrs. Turner has died, and Miss Turner from Store Point. He didn't say she was buried in the gully. He said she was taken to the burial ground from 10 a.m. They arrived at midday. 2 hours. It doesn't take 2 hours to get to what we call the Store Point burial ground now. It would take about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So there's a 2-hour distance. So something doesn't add up here. Now, if you check all the death certificates of the burials, they say Donnelly's Creek / Store Point. And then the ones buried at Edwards Reef says always Edwards Reef. So we don't know where this second burial ground is, and there definitely is one. but this is a challenge I face, and it's a big challenge. Goes, where is this main burial ground? I did speak to a lady who worked in the area in the 1950s with her dad mining. She said she used to see some brass plaques up this track overlooking Store Point. I went up there, perfect spot for a burial ground overlooking the town. No, there's not a skerrig of evidence. So she must have the wrong spur. I don't know. The plaques are no longer there. We've metal detect everything. So, and it just makes, and look, everyone I tell them about this Store Point burial ground, they agree with me. It's not the proper burial ground because it's upstream from their water as well. It just doesn't make sense, and it's in a gully. They've buried them in the gully, so it doesn't make sense. So it's a big challenge. I've got to try to find the original or the main burial ground there, James. So, yeah.
How do you identify whose a grave is? Like, what process do you go through when you find a grave?
A lone grave, yep. We go back to the death certificates. The death certificates, and another lady who does very good work, Jeanette Rogers, she's produced lonely graves at the Gippsland Goldfields. She's also got some good information in there, which gives you a rough details of where they are buried. Now, here's another good story, quite interesting, and I found out this in the Jeanette Rogers book, a girl called Eliza Alderson. Now, when I first went in 1994 at Donnelly's Creek, we stopped at Edwards Reef, and a group of us, and we go, that looked like a grave. So we photographed it, not thinking of anything. It wasn't in the campground. It was down the hill a bit, out of people's way. I never thought anything about it. We just took a photo, and I've always kept that photo. Still got it today. It wasn't until we did some research, and we knew this part of Edwards Hill was called Albion Hill. And Eliza Alderson, she was buried at Albion Hill. Why she wasn't buried in the cemetery at Edwards Reef, I'm not sure. But a lot of people bury their children or babies behind their house, so it's not uncommon for that. And even the hotel sites, there's numerous hotel sites we've got where they used to bury their guests on the back where they died, so it's not uncommon. Anyway,
untidy for the hotel.
I know.
Does that say something about the hospitality when a hotel's got its own cemetery?
Well, I could actually tell you a story about another hotel up at Jericho. Maybe I'll touch on that in a minute. Anyway, okay, that's got to be Eliza Alderson. Anyway, it was many years later, and why I didn't go back earlier and do things, I don't know, but there's a lot on my plate all the time. I went back. The bulldozers have been in there from Dalpin Hayfield. Not sure why they were there because it's not out of their jurisdiction. It's under Erica. What's happened, a dog had fell down a mine shaft, so they panicked and started backfilling all the mine shafts up there. But they never backfilled the real dangerous ones. So still today, there's some very more dangerous ones than what they backfilled. So be careful when you're walking around the ferns. There is shafts there still today. But they destroyed the whole area where the grave was. I couldn't find it. So some time passed, and as I do talks for a lot of clubs, and I was at a four-wheel drive club. It might have been the Land Rover Club. And I told them this story. And lo and behold, this guy puts his hand up. He goes, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I found it. I go, you're kidding. He goes, no, he went back up there, and he found, get this, James, the 4 posts of the grave buried underground. The dozer had uncovered what the fires burnt above. So
wow.
It was confirmed it was a grave because he still had the 4 posts, original ones. Couldn't believe it. And I organised a club at the time. Can you go up there and do a working bee and put a little, cut some sapling trees and put a little frame around it, grave to protect it. So, and that little frame's still there today, but we've actually got proper cypress pine post with a sign commemorating her burial. So, and that's how we definitely were able to confirm. We know she was buried at Albion Hill, which is right up smack back on Albion Hill. And these 4 posts just put icing on the cake. Couldn't believe it. So, yeah. So that was a really good one. And it would still be unmarked today if I didn't go to do that talk for that club. It just fate put me there, I think, and said, look, mention it, and there you go. Yeah. So we try to work on much evidence we can to find things and what looks like on the ground.
Yep.
Without digging up the grave, of course. So, and we can't get access to infrared machinery or that sort of stuff, what they use in archaeological things, digs. So we just have to do the best we can.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another good thing was, still on the topic of graves, is when we cleaned up Jericho. Now, when we surveyed it, my surveyor mate was standing on the roof of my car with the staff because it was that high in blackberries. You couldn't see the other end, so you could get a reading. It was that bad. Now, we knew there were graves there, a couple of broken stones, but when we surveyed it and we got DELP to burn it, the safest thing is to burn stuff. There's no point in going in with dozers or anything like that, and it's too hard with brush cutters. It's best is to burn it. We uncovered some massive graves, massive. And like some, you think it's got to be four family members buried in there. And I said to the ranger, Noel, I reckon that's Gaffney's grave, because I know Thomas Gaffney, who founded Gaffney's Creek, was buried there. Now, it clicked to me as well that his headstone was removed from Jericho and placed in a monument in Gaffney's Creek. Now, this was done in the 60s, 70s. We don't know who did this. And I wasn't fussed. I didn't care to me who did it. All I did, I wanted it back in its rightful place. So as I've got very good word, I've got good. I get along well with all the locals, and Gaffney's Creek was no different. And I said to the committee, look, I'd love this stone back. Let's put it back in its rightful place where it belongs. They had no objection. So the problem was getting that stone out of this concrete and rock monument. It took me over 2 hours to slowly chisel it out without breaking the marble, because it was very well concreted in. Really good job. And then I repaired their monument, and if you go there today, you can't tell that I've removed the stone. Then I cleaned up the stone, then I gave it to the ranger. He filled up he cleaned up all the lettering and refilled the lettering, which was made out of lead. Cleaned all that up. The problem is, we didn't know what grave it was. It could have been one of three that we had found, or could be something else. We were so lucky that when Noel was speaking to Ron Cameo, who does mountaintop experience tours in the area, he grew up in that area. He had a photo of when Thomas Gaffney stone was there back in the 50s or 60s. I say, Ron, you're a good man. This is going to solve us. And he did. The grave that we thought was that big family with Thomas, I think his son's buried in there. It could be someone else. We're not sure. We only can know what's written on the gravestone. It was the one. So what we did, we poured a concrete slab over it and we stuck in this beautiful granite monument and put it back in its rightful place, which is there still today. And now this whole cemetery gets maintained regularly. It's all fenced. It's all beautiful. Unfortunately, we couldn't fence the whole cemetery because when you go up to it, there's a vehicle track that they put in the 1960s, I think, and it actually goes through the cemetery. They've cut a vehicle track through it. And on the left-hand side, when you're going up, there's a big steep bank. It's also part of the cemetery, which obviously we can't fence because it's all been sluiced away in the 50s and 60s. And when they were doing the sluicing, they're commenting, and you can read the historical books, they were uncovering bones as they were sluicing. But it didn't faze them. They were still going for the gold. And they knew there were bones there. The graves were there, but they kept sluicing. So that's a bit disappointing, but you read a lot of stories like that.
Yeah,
The gold, money, like people think of money rather than people.
So when was the peak of that sort of area as far as population goes? And can you give us an idea of what it was like then? Like, how significant were these towns? Look, the peak it's a very short-lived peak. The peak started from the 1863, 1864, and it peaked out to be 1870. Now, sure, there was a lot going on in 1870, 1880, up to 1900, but the peak was that 10-year buffer in a lot of cases
where there were just thousands of people. But then, the lure of gold wasn't, thinking, they'll get rich overnight, but it wasn't. And they were better off working for companies. At least they would guarantee to get something. So a lot of the big mines were worked by companies, not individuals. And there's a lot of individuals scratching the rivers. Yeah, so your peak was the 1860 to 1870. And then it just started to diminish in getting less and less. And by 1900, there was little left. There were still people here and there. Look, it did drag on until the Second World War, or to the 1939 bushfires, the Black Friday, and then after that, everything's just gone. Yep. But
So the Black Friday, because I know, incredible. Is it the pub at Woods Point? They've got some photos from the fire. Is that right?
Yes, they've got really good photos. Yes, yeah. Funny enough, I think only 70-something people, 80 people got killed at Black Friday. But if you look at the map of Victoria got burnt, it's just a phenomenal amount how much of the state got burnt. But a lot of them survived by going into the old mines as well. Yeah, and they survived the bushfires that way. And there's just some fantastic stories regarding that, And, it was a fairly big fire, Like, if that happened in today, a lot more people would be killed because of the higher population as well. By 1939, there's a massive population in those hills. But now we've got this urban sprawl going out there, and there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people out there now. So the chances of more people getting killed gets higher and higher. So, but if you look on the map, I think the burn is one of the biggest burns we've had that I know of. But we've had big ones too in the 1897. I'll probably be corrected on that.
51? The Black Thursday fire?
Yeah, what was that?
1851 was the Black Thursday fire, and that was 5 million hectares.
Yeah, like they talk about fires now. I'm thinking, I don't know. There's bigger ones then. And, there's some really big ones there.
Well, the scary thing is, so Black Saturday was 450,000 hectares. Ash Wednesday was 500,000 hectares.
Yes.
Black Friday was 2 million hectares, so 4 times bigger. Yeah. And Black Thursday, 5 million hectares. But I don't think...
That's huge.
Yeah, but it was in 1851, so who lived in Victoria in 1851?
Yeah, so they're talking about this climate change and bush. It says, no, it's just the population growth and how we live today is different. That Thursday you're talking about, that happened now. How many thousands would be killed? It would be unbelievable.
And they had 12 deaths. So did you say 1898? Because that was Red Tuesday.
1897, I think, or late 1890s. We had some record heats, which they still haven't been broken in the country, in some parts of towns in Victoria. Massive heat wave it was. Yeah, because if you look on the records and that, you go, wow, 1895 or 1897, gee, that was hot. Yeah, but I just can't remember the exact date.
Yeah, there was Red Tuesday, which I've never heard of. I'm just having a quick look now.
Red Tuesday, wow.
And that was in 1898 and killed 12 people.
I wish the media would publish all this sort of stuff. That's really interesting to know,
Well, it's just amazing because people think that, Ash Wednesday and Black Saturday, they are the, obviously, 173 deaths in Black Saturday. But Black Friday, there were 71 deaths. More people died in Black Friday than they did in Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday was 47.
Yeah. It was lucky, wasn't it, in Ash Wednesday, because that was very populated too. So lucky people could escape in time, So, yeah.
And it's interesting because it's some horrific stories. My dad lived in Tura at the time, and there were people who got into their water tank to avoid the fire that was coming, and they were boiled alive.
I heard that.
Yeah.
That's horrific.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really bad. Getting burnt is bad enough, and it's something you don't wish upon anyone, but getting boiled, and there's no escape.
And it was one of those things that really stuck with him, and because that story, obviously, that was a central point of it. Yeah, horrific.
Yeah. I was also speaking to someone who went through Black Friday in 1939, and he's saying the sky above him was on fire, nothing was burning, but you could just see a ball of flame just over the top of everything.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's really scary, you know. Yeah, just the whole sky was alight, he reckons. Yeah, he was right in the thick of it. I think he was up in Kevington. So, yeah, really scary. So, our incorporation for the Aberfeldy track is all funded by donations and membership. Now, I do a lot of expedition work every year, a lot of trips and find new sites. And I said I had found over 1,500 sites. So what we do to encourage getting donations and funding, we encourage people to join a membership. It's only $50 a year, or you can actually buy a life membership for $300. You get to go with me and find new mines, historical sites, hotels, graves, everything. I do all the research with my committee and volunteers, and you tag along and see what we find and stuff like that. And it's an experience where a lot of people can't share because they don't get the opportunity or know where things are. Now they do. They come along with us, and 100% of the money goes back to the project for keeping the maintenance. And that's worked very well. Like we've got over 70 members now. Look, a lot of them don't come along. They like to get our newsletters and look at our photos because they access all our database with photos and old mining maps and historical notes. We share all that, and they just love sitting back in their lounge, watch what we do and read the interesting stuff we find. And but we get a lot of companies donating stuff to us. We've got charity tins out to local businesses. Look, all the local businesses love us. It gets tourism. They're tourists up there, keeps them alive.
And and I think that this is a really important point because, you don't see any Ferraris driving around in the bush. All of those guys are doing it really tough. And tourism, I think, is the easiest way that any of us can help out. Go out, explore some of the awesome country out there, explore some of the sites, and do the right thing. Be a responsible four-wheel driver. Fill up at, the closest place to where you're going four-wheel driving. Have lunch in the pub. Get a loaf of bread, get some bacon for the barbie, get your grog there. All of those sort of things. They're the things that really help these places ticking along.
Yes.
Because, and my thing is that how different, the only thing that makes Walhalla different to, some of the towns that we're talking about is the fact that, there's still people living there, and we've got to be able to help them make a life for themselves out there. Otherwise, Walhalla will be a place that people will go camping to in 50 years' time, and they'll say there used to be a town here. And it'll be just the same as Talbotville. Talbotville was a massive place back in the day.
Oh, huge.
And the only thing now,
photos, it's incredible. Yeah,
truly amazing. And the only thing is the footpaths that you can see there now.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, all the pack tracks and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Woods Point, we've extended from Woods Point to Jamison, but Woods Point is sort of slowly dying, and we needed something to boost their tourism side of it. And they've got this beautiful walking track. I mean, when I say beautiful, I'm gobsmacked with it. It's looked after by one of the locals up there. Yep. He maintains it with his wife. And I said to him, look, let's include this as part of the Aberfeldy track. This is one of the best walks ever. It takes you not only to the cottage gardens, the Chinese gardens, the old hut sites. It takes you along a waterways to the mines, to the beautiful other gullies of ferns and everything. It's just a beautiful look at, and it's not a hard walk. It follows original pack tracks. So I proposed to the Woods Point Township and DELP, we'll produce the map, we'll fund the map, and if DELP can fund the infrastructure, not an issue. They didn't even have to think about it. I go, let's do it. So it was just yesterday I finished the map, and it looks great. So that you got the beautiful walk, showing the walk on the map with all the sites we've marked. There's about 12 sites, and on the back of the map it's got text which tells you all about the sites. And the walks are all graded, and there's different types of walks you can do, but anyone can walk those tracks. They're not that hard. And now the map's ready, but the infrastructure will be going in hopefully sometime this year. Unfortunately, the ranger's hurt his back a big time, and he needs to rest for a little while. So once we get Jeff back on board, we'll be able to give him a hand and put the infrastructure in and hopefully get some more tourists in there and doing this beautiful walk, and hopefully get thirsty afterwards and stop in the pub or the general store.
That's it.
Support the community.
So for
It's all
someone,
about that, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. So for someone who wants to go four-wheel driving in the area, what are your top picks for places to go and visit in the area? Like, what are the things that are of most historical?
Okay. Well, the most popular walk is the water wheel, the Morning Star water wheel. Everyone knows the Water Star water wheel. Now, that was all good and well by visiting the water wheel, but not many people know there was a big township next to it. And I'm talking about a big township with over 50 people. And beyond the water wheel is that beautiful crinoline boiler and stamper. And that's a must-see. So what we did with this project, we signed everything and cleaned everything up. So, okay, look, it's a long walk. It's I'm just using the top of my head. I think it's about 2-kilometre walk along a pack track. It's not a hard walk, but it's a long walk. The problem was everyone was saying, "No, we're there yet. We're there yet." So I was sort of thinking, okay, let's fix this up. I said, let's put some distance markers. So every 500 metres, I've got X amount of distance to go to the water wheel. Now there's no grizzling. And it wasn't the kids who was grizzling, it was always the adults. The kids are fine. So I've got distance markers to the water wheel. Now also, where the water wheel is, I've also got another sign we put up to go to the crinoline boiler, which is only 500 metres more. A lot of people didn't know that. It was only 500 metres. It's a beautiful boiler. Now, if you light a fire in the boiler, which I suggest not in summer, but in winter, the smoke goes outside of the boiler through pipes and it goes up the chimney. The chimney's still standing and it goes out of the chimney. And go, ooh, that's not something you see every day. So, and all around there I've marked big hut sites, like the chimneys are still standing. But between the crinoline boiler and the water wheel, I've got a sign there showing where the township was. And you look at it and goes, oh, yeah, there's all the huts from the township. And funny enough, I went to the Public Records Office recently, and we're doing some research because I'm publishing a new book on McAvoy's track with my cousin. We come up with this old map. And just out of sequence, we weren't looking for it. It's the map of the Morning Star area. All the buildings marked on it with who lived there and all the pack tracks in the area, and they've named them. I go, oh, how cool is this? So it's something I've got to sit down now and try to work out who lived at what house up there. So it's probably something in the future I could mark, okay, Joe Bloggs lived here, Joe Bloggs lived there, or whatever. So that was a good little find, that one. So, look, the Morning Star water wheel is the most iconic walk by far. I think second in the walks would be the Store Point one. That's starting to get popular because people are starting to hear about it. Yeah, it's sort of not hard for driving to get there at all.
And what is there to see on the Store Point walk?
Okay, you've got the burial ground that I mentioned before and all the hut sites.
Yep.
And there's a beautiful hut site at the end of the walk. That's where it comes up to a hut. And you go up this little incline and it's quartz. It's quartz pathway either side, marked the pathway up to the house site. And that's still original quartz the owner from the 1800s would have put down to create his path. Beautifully marked, and it goes up to a big hut site with 2 chimneys. Yeah, it's a really good, easy walk, and it goes all around this hut site and loops back going the other way. So it's a very... Look, when people walk that walk, they say, this is a fantastic walk. They love it. So, and anyone can do that because it's not a hard walk. It's all gentle gradient. And recently we installed 2 walking bridges to go across the creek now as well, which is all funded by us and DELP. And also Mr. ex-Senator Ricky Muir provided a lot of timber for us for nothing as well, because he's a very passionate man in the area and he's helped us out many a times through vandalism and that by donating his own money and time. So we're very grateful for Ricky.
And he owns a sawmill now, I believe. Yeah,
walking bridges there and everything, so it's really well done, that track. Yeah, but look, there's plenty of other sites, and I recommend everyone to grab one of our maps. If you want to go to harder forward driving, go and see the Aberfeldy Crossing Township, going down O'Keefe's track, nice steep climb down. There's a township I found many years ago, and it goes to one of the massive bottle dumps where we've got the sign. There are bottles everywhere. They must have had a big hotel happening there. But
and so what track's that?
Yeah, so I just recommend everyone to grab a map and have a look, and we've graded all the tracks, and there's so much to see. It's something for everybody there to grab.
And which track was that leads down to the bottle point?
Yeah, O'Keefe's track.
O'Keefe's. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just past, if you're heading just north out of Aberfeldy, I think you got Pluto track and O'Keefe's. Take O'Keefe's straight down and you get to this township called Aberfeldy Crossing. Reputed to have the cheapest oats in the district down there, according to one of the 1860s documents.
Wow.
Yeah. That's where Mrs. Doan used to have a hotel down there, and then that's who I mentioned last time, who died at Store Point and was buried in that gully.
Yep.
She's the old Scotch woman, they called her. 2 big hotel sites there, and very overgrown now to get to hotel sites. I didn't clear that, but it's massive building with 2 huge chimneys. And someone's supposed to be buried there as well. We know who it is. Could never find it, though, even after the fires. Had no luck. I don't know what's happened. So it looks like they had a big market garden there, too. It's all terraced near the Aberfeldy River as well. So, but it's all overgrown. But the walking track to the site, it's in beautiful nick. Again, looked after by one of our clubs. And people can jump on the website and see all the clubs as well who maintain our site. Everything's on the website, so it's well worth checking that out as well.
I'll put a link in the show notes so that everyone can sort of go in there and have a look.
That. Yeah, that'd be really good. Yeah, and get everyone to like our Facebook site too, because we always update on the Facebook.
Yep.
And like every time, I don't always put it on when people get vandalised stuff, but amount of shares, I think we've got over 1,000 shares and hundreds of thousands of views. With people just so disappointed.
Yep.
I said, look, don't worry. It's a minute percent of people who disrespect other people's property.
Yep.
And you always get them. So that's how it is. But all we can do is be vigilant and catch these guys and teach them a lesson.
Yep.
So that's the only thing we can do. So yeah, and we have caught people and they've made to pay. So that's a good thing.
Yep.
So
excellent.
And we use that money back into our incorporation and fund stuff. So that's a good thing. It's like a full-time job for me now. So
it sounds like it.
I work for myself. So, but personally, I'll probably put $30,000 into it if you count all my time and travel and other money I put in it. But it's what I want to do. So as long as people like it and people want to join us or donate to us, that'd be great. So we keep this going for future generations because it is unique. There's nothing like it in the Southern Hemisphere. We should be proud of it. It's right on our doorstep.
And so a big thing is a big thank you for all of the work that you've done, because I think, it really helps the people living in the local areas, because it's a much richer tourism story now. Thank you for, keeping these stories alive, because without that kind of work, the people who knew these things, they're all, dead or dying. A lot of these documents are very old. It requires someone to actually put meaning, to interpret those documents and then to put meaning to it. Otherwise, people are just going to drive on by and they're going to miss all of these really, really rich stories. And it's always harder to get these stories, the further down the track that they are. So, awesome work. And, thank you.
Yeah. I'd just like to make one more thing is some of these sites we knew nothing about. And we're producing this McAvoy's track, as I said, with my cousin. And she's doing all the research, which is very painstaking work. She's been working on it for 6 years now. There was a site along the tourist route. I said, I know it's called Maguire's, but why is it called Maguire's? It's only on one map in 1910, and if you look at the early maps of 1870, it says hut. That's all it says. That's all we had. We had nothing. I don't know how she found it, but she had a whole history of it. I'd like to read it, because bear in mind, no one alive today knows anything about it. She found it somewhere, I don't know where, and it is one of the best funniest stories. We actually put on a sign there, which is there now. And it's along Maguire's track, which people know the area. It's the track that starts from Mount Useful and goes right across down to the Aberfeldy crossing, up O'Keefe's back to Aberfeldy. And it was the original route for McAvoy's track before they changed it over Mount Selma. So, and this was about 1860s. So I'll just read the description on the sign, if I may say, James, and it is
go for it.
It is a good read. The Maguires kept a bark shanty situated between Mount Useful and the Aberfeldy River on the route to the Jordan goldfields. A pair of weary travellers, overtaken by nightfall, arrived at the shanty one evening, only to find Maguire tucked in his bed. No argument could induce Maguire to get out of bed, so the door was sent crashing into the room, causing a raucous uproar. The row finally ceased when the traveller introduced the irate shanty keeper to his companion, the warden, and Maguire swore on his soul that there wasn't any kind of spirits in the house. Now, you've got to remember, he was sort of freaking out because there was a lot of sly grog shanties out there without licence. So, after using some threats, Maguire produced a half bottle of gin, which apparently a kind-hearted packer had given him that evening. Meanwhile, Mrs. Maguire, deaf as a beetle, came hobbling out of another room with some glasses and a bowl of brandy. So that was a story that we had found. Previously knew nothing, and we come up with this story that's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just imagine a guy coming in, kicking down the hotel door, demanding some grog. It's cold. He wants accommodation, and it's the warden.
Yeah.
Yeah, just incredible.
It's amazing work that you're doing to, really bring those stories to life. So thank you very much for your time. And
that's all right. Thanks, James.
I'll put
Thanks
all of lots of links there, some photos of the areas, just so that, and some lists of where the places are, so that, and I'll put a link in for the map as well, so that everyone can go out and explore some of the amazing areas that we've got out there, learn a little bit of the history and see some of the beautiful bush.
Yes.
No worries.
Fantastic. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thanks, Rudy. Wow. What a lot of amazing stories. And I think it's really, that's one of the things I love about that whole area. And, a lot of the areas out in rural Australia, in the old days, you had things like trains. Transportation was different. There was a lot less urbanisation. And it's amazing how some people lived. And I hope Rudy can share some amazing photos. I'll put them into the show notes of just what some of these old towns look like. And you've heard me talk about it before. It's really important to go out and support these rural towns, support them with four-wheel driving, go out and be the responsible four-wheel driver, inject a little bit of money into their economy, because without doing that, we're going to lose all of these little towns that we love to go and visit, the pubs that we love to go and have a meal at. So that's about it. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave a rating in iTunes. It helps us to spread the word, and more people are finding out about the podcast every month. So thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see you out on the track someday soon. Bye.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free. If you're looking for a good route, check out 4x4earth.com today.